The first wolf entered the pit carrying a crown between its teeth. Above the circular arena, nearly 1,000 nobles leaned over the black stone balconies, waiting to watch a palace maid die. Torches burned beneath the royal banners. Snow drifted through the open roof and vanished against the heated sand below. Somewhere behind the iron gates, the rest of the king's war beasts snarled and threw their bodies against their chain. At the center of the pit stood Lyra Ven. Her gray servant's dress had been torn at the shoulder. Blood ran from her temple, crossed the curve of her cheek, and disappeared beneath the iron collar locked around her throat. Her wrists were bound behind her. She had no weapon, no wolf, and no family name powerful enough to make the court hesitate. Lord Garrick Valor rose from his carved seat beside the empty throne and addressed the gathered kingdom. "Behold the punishment reserved for those who steal a royal identity." The crowd answered with a low murmur of satisfaction. Lyra lifted her face toward the balcony. Royal Alpha Caelan stood beneath the black and silver banners of House Valor, dressed in ceremonial armor, his hands resting on the stone railing. He did not look away from her. He did not speak in her defense. That silence hurt more than the iron collar. Only 3 nights earlier, he had stood beside her in a moonlit corridor and warned her never to enter the Western Tower again. His voice had been cold, but his fingers had trembled when they touched the strange birthmark beneath her ear. Now, before the entire court, he watched while his uncle ordered her death. The wolf approaching Lyra was larger than any natural beast. Old scars crossed its black muzzle. Its shoulders rose almost to her chest, and one pale eye had been ruined by an ancient blade. The creature was called Gravefang. It had killed 6 handlers, 3 enemy alphas, and the last priest who had attempted to bless it. The nobles began to chant, "Blood, blood, blood." Gravefang stopped before Lyra. She could hear its breathing, could smell iron, snow, and old forest trapped in its thick fur. The crown in its mouth was not one she recognized. It had been crushed on one side, and dried black blood stained the silver point. Lord Garrick smiled. "Finish her." Gravefang lowered its head. The chant broke apart. The crown fell onto the sand at Lyra's bare feet. Then the deadliest wolf in the kingdom bent one scarred foreleg and bowed. Silence struck the arena. From behind the gates came a single howl so deep that dust shook from the walls. Another wolf entered carrying a rusted sword. A third dragged the broken breastplate of a forgotten king. Then the gates burst open. The beasts did not attack Lyra. They moved around her with terrible purpose, laying bones, armor, shields, chains, and ruined crowns in a growing circle. One by one, the wild creatures began to construct something at her back. A seat, a throne. Lyra stared at the animals gathering around her, while the court recoiled in horror. On the royal balcony, Alpha Caelan's face lost all color, and beneath his ceremonial gloves, his hidden claws tore through his palm. 7 days earlier, Lyra had still believed invisibility could protect her. She had spent 19 years moving through the palace like a shadow that carried water, washed blood from armor, changed candles, and learned which corridors belonged to people who would strike a servant simply for breathing too loudly. She knew how to lower her eyes without appearing afraid. She knew which guards accepted stolen wine in exchange for silence, and which noble women left bruises where gowns would conceal them. Most importantly, she knew never to answer questions about where she had come from. The old housekeeper had given her a simple story. Lyra's mother had been a kitchen woman who died during a winter fever. Her father was unknown. No one had claimed her, so the palace had kept her as it kept unwanted dogs because feeding her cost less than burying her. Lyra had never believed all of it. There were no records of a kitchen servant named Mara Ven. No grave carried her mother's name. The oldest servants became frightened whenever Lyra asked about the night she had been brought to the palace. But survival depended upon knowing when truth was too dangerous to pursue. So Lyra worked. She woke before dawn, braided her dark hair, covered the pale crescent mark behind her left ear, and carried hot water through the frozen halls. She spoke only when necessary. She never joined the servant girls when they whispered about handsome soldiers or the royal mating season. She did not attend moon ceremonies because animals behaved strangely around her. Palace hounds stopped barking when she passed. Horses lowered their heads. Once, when a chained wolf was brought from the northern forests, It had stared at her through the bars until tears ran from its golden eyes. Lyra had learned to stay away from beasts. On the morning, everything changed. She was sent to clean the Western Council chamber after a night of political negotiations. Blood stained the long table. One chair had been shattered, and deep claw marks scarred the floor. At the head of the chamber stood Royal Alpha Caelan Valor. He had returned from the border before sunrise with snow in his black hair, and another victory added to his name. He was 30 years old, broad-shouldered, and tall enough to make even seasoned warriors step aside. A dark scar crossed one side of his throat, disappearing beneath the collar of his armor. His eyes were a cold, unnatural silver. Every unmated woman in the kingdom knew his face. Every rival alpha feared it. Caelan had inherited command of the royal armies after his father, King Edric, had fallen ill. For 3 years, Caelan had fought rebellions, border raids, and the slow collapse of the throne's authority, yet the crown had never been placed upon his head. King Edric still lived in the upper chambers, though few had seen him in months. Until the old king died, Caelan remained Royal Alpha rather than king. Lyra entered carrying a bucket and immediately sensed that something was wrong. Caelan stood alone beside the window. His gloves lay on the table. His bare hands were pressed against the stone ledge. Black veins moved beneath his skin. Not shadows, veins. They crawled upward from his wrists like living roots before fading beneath his sleeve. Lyra stopped. "You were not summoned," Caelan said without turning. "The chamber steward ordered me to clean. Leave." She should have obeyed. Instead, she noticed droplets of blood on the floor behind him. His fingers were curled so tightly against the stone that his nails had begun to lengthen into claws. Lyra placed the bucket down. "Your Highness." His head turned. The look in his eyes froze her. For one terrible moment, no man stood beside the window. Something ancient and starving watched her from behind Caelan's face. His pupils narrowed, his shoulders shifted beneath his coat with the wet crack of changing bone. "Get out," he growled. Lyra backed toward the door. A howl erupted from his chest. Caelan fell to one knee. His claws scraped across the stone. Black fur spread over his knuckles, and the scar along his throat began to glow like a line of molten silver. Lyra knew she should run. Instead, she crossed the chamber and reached for him. Caelan seized her wrist before she could touch his shoulder. His grip was crushing. His teeth had sharpened. The air around him smelled of smoke and burning pine. "I said leave. You are bleeding. I may kill you. You have not yet." His silver eyes searched hers as if the answer angered him. Lyra slowly opened her free hand. "Let me help. No healer can help me. I am not a healer. That is not reassuring." Despite the danger, the corner of her mouth almost moved. Caelan noticed. For half a breath, the monster in his expression receded. Lyra touched the glowing scar at his throat. A violent pulse of heat passed through her fingers. The chamber vanished. She saw a forest burning beneath a red moon. A boy of perhaps 12 stood beside a dead white wolf, his hands covered in blood. Beyond him, soldiers dragged a woman in a crown of antlers toward a stone altar, her long dark hair whipped in the firestorm. The woman looked directly at Lyra, though the vision belonged to another time. "Find me, little heart," a beast roared. Lyra was thrown backward. She struck the council table and fell among splintered wood. Caelan staggered away from her, breathing hard. The black veins beneath his skin had disappeared. He looked fully human again. "What did you do?" he demanded. Lyra stared at her trembling fingers. "I do not know." Caelan crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her upright. His gaze fixed upon the side of her neck, where the fall had loosened her hair. The crescent mark behind her ear was exposed. His grip tightened. "Where did you get that?" "It is a birthmark." "Who gave you your name?" "The housekeeper." "What was your mother called?" Lyra tried to pull away. "You ordered me to leave. Answer me." Something in his voice made the windows vibrate. Lyra's fear hardened into anger. All her life, nobles had expected her obedience simply because they spoke loudly enough. "My mother was Mara Ven," she said. "She worked in the kitchens and died when I was an infant. My father was no one. I was left here because no family wanted me. Those are the answers written in the servant ledger, Your Highness. Are they sufficient?" Caelan released her as though burned. Pain moved across his face, swift and carefully hidden. "No," he said. "They are not. Before Lyra could ask what he meant, the council doors opened. Lord Garrick entered with 4 royal guard. He was King Edric's younger brother and the most powerful man in the palace after Caelan. Age had silvered his hair but had not softened his features. His robes were dark green, the color of the old royal council, and a chain of carved wolf teeth hung over his chest. His eyes moved from the broken furniture to Lyra's exposed birthmark. For the first time since she had known him, Garrick Valor looked afraid. Then the fear disappeared behind a courteous smile. An unusual hour to entertain servants, nephew. Caelan stepped between them. She was cleaning. On her knees beside you? I fell, Lyra said. Garrick's attention settled on her. Servants do that often in this palace. His tone was mild. The cruelty beneath it was not. Caelan picked up his gloves. Leave us, Lyra. This time she obeyed. As the door closed behind her, she heard Garrick say, You cannot continue hiding what you are becoming. Caelan answered too quietly for her to understand. But before Lyra reached the end of the corridor, she heard another sentence. She must not learn who she is. Lyra spent the day trying to convince herself she had misunderstood. By evening, the western tower had been locked under royal guard. No servant was permitted near the council chamber. Caelan did not appear at supper. Lord Garrick remained with the old king for hours, and priests from the Moon Temple were seen entering through the northern gate. Lyra kept her head down, yet questions moved restlessly inside her. Who did Garrick believe she was? Why had touching Caelan shown her a burning forest? And why had the woman wearing the antler crown called her Little Heart? That night, Lyra dreamed of wolves digging beneath a field of snow. She woke to scratching outside her chamber. The servant dormitory was cold and dark. 12 women slept in narrow beds around her. Lyra quietly rose and opened the door. A small gray wolf cub sat in the corridor. No wild animal could have passed the palace walls. No cub could have climbed 6 flights of stone stairs without being seen. The creature stared at her, then turned and walked away. Lyra followed. It led her down the servant stairs, through the abandoned laundry hall, and toward the western tower. Every guard post stood empty. Moonlight spilled through the narrow windows and turned the floor silver. At the locked tower door, the cub vanished. Not ran. Vanished. Lyra stared at the space where it had been. Then something scratched from the other side of the door. She found the key hanging from a guard's belt on a chair nearby. The absence of soldiers should have warned her. The convenient key should have warned her more, but the sound beyond the door was not threatening. It was a wounded animal's whimper. Lyra unlocked the tower. Cold air swept over her. The stairway beyond curved downward rather than up. She descended beneath the palace until the walls changed from cut stone to exposed black rock. At the bottom waited a circular chamber carved with ancient symbols. In its center stood a cage. Inside lay a white she-wolf. Silver chains bound each leg. An iron muzzle covered its jaws. Blood soaked the fur along its side, and several temple blades had been driven into the floor around it. Lyra approached carefully. The she-wolf opened one blue eye. A sound entered Lyra's mind. Daughter. Her knees weakened. The wolf had not spoken aloud, yet Lyra felt the word in her bone. Who did this to you? The animal strained against the chains. Images flashed through Lyra's mind. Priests in gray robes, Lord Garrick holding a silver bowl, blood dripping from white fur, the old king watching from the shadows. Then another image, Lyra as an infant, wrapped in a dark red blanket. The antler-crowned woman held her while wolves gathered in a ring beneath the moon. Lyra touched the crescent behind her ear. The she-wolf whined. Footsteps echoed on the stair. Lyra turned. Royal Alpha Caelan descended into the chamber, sword drawn. He wore no ceremonial armor now, only a black tunic and leather bracers. His expression changed when he saw Lyra beside the cage. I told you never to come here. You never told me this place existed. You should not have needed the warning. The wolf is dying. She is not a wolf. Lyra looked back at the chained animal. Caelan approached slowly. Move away from the cage. Why? Because if those chains break, she will tear through every living creature in this palace. She called me daughter. Caelan stopped. The silence between them deepened. You heard her? He asked. In my mind, that is impossible. You have used that word twice since meeting me. It has not been correct yet. His jaw tightened. Lyra crouched beside one of the chains. Ancient letters had been carved into the metal. Who is she? Caelan sheathed his sword, seized Lyra around the waist, and pulled her away from the cage. The contact sent a strange heat through both of them. Lyra felt his body go rigid. Beneath his skin, something powerful turned toward her. Mine. The word did not come from Caelan's mouth. It came from the beast inside him. Lyra twisted free. Do not touch me. His silver gaze darkened. You followed an apparition into a forbidden prison, approached a creature responsible for the deaths of hundreds, and your greatest concern is that I touched you? My greatest concern is that everyone in this palace believes commands are substitutes for truth. You would not survive the truth. Perhaps I am tired of surviving lies. Her words struck him harder than she expected. For a moment, Caelan looked not like the feared Royal Alpha, but like a man who had spent years waiting for a punishment he could no longer avoid. He looked toward the White Wolf. She was captured during the fall of the Wild Court. What is the Wild Court? A kingdom that no longer exists. Why was it destroyed? Caelan's voice became guarded. Its queen refused to submit to my grandfather's rule. She commanded wolves beyond the royal bloodlines, wild packs, mountain beasts, ancient creatures that obeyed no alpha. The throne considered her power a threat. And the woman in the antler crown? His eyes returned to Lyra, Queen Alindra. The name opened something inside her. A distant howl rolled through the underground chamber. The white she-wolf lifted her head. Lyra's crescent mark began to burn. Caelan saw it. He moved toward her, but she backed away. You know, she whispered. Lyra. You knew that name would affect me. We must leave. Who was Queen Alindra? Footsteps sounded above them. Many footsteps. Caelan cursed under his breath. He took Lyra's hand and pulled her toward a narrow opening behind the cave. So late. Lord Garrick entered with temple priests and royal guards. The old lord did not appear surprised to find them together. That was when Lyra understood. The empty posts, the abandoned key, the gray cub that had vanished. She had been led here deliberately. Garrick's gaze fell upon their joined hand. How moving, he said. The monster and the ghost finally meet. Caelan released Lyra and stepped in front of her. Your priests abandoned their positions. They obeyed my orders. You set this trap. I created an opportunity. Garrick descended the final stair, carrying a narrow wooden box. For 19 years, I wondered whether the child had truly died. Then a nameless maid began quieting palace hounds with a glance. Horses knelt when she passed. Wild wolves gathered beneath her window. Lyra's heartbeat slowed into heavy blows. You knew I was here. I suspected. Garrick opened the box. Inside lay a small crown made of blackened silver and ivory branches. The antler-crowned woman from Lyra's vision had worn it. The white she-wolf began to thrash against her chain. Garrick smiled without warmth. Let us see whether blood remembers what the mind has forgotten. He threw the crown onto the floor. It struck the stone and split open. A needle hidden inside the metal cut Lyra's ankle. One drop of her blood touched the crown. The entire underground chamber shook. Symbols carved into the walls ignited with silver fire. The white she-wolf roared through its muzzle. Every torch went dark. Then hundreds of voices filled Lyra's mind. Princess, daughter, heir, come home. Lyra collapsed. Caelan caught her before she struck the ground. The instant his arms closed around her, the beast beneath his skin surged violently. His eyes turned black. His spine bent. Ash-colored fur spread across his neck. The priests recoiled. Garrick did not. There, he said. Both abominations revealed together. Caelan forced himself upright, holding Lyra against his chest. Touch her, he warned, his voice divided between man and beast, and I will fill this chamber with your blood. Garrick's expression hardened. You still do not understand. I am trying to save your throne. I have never asked you to save it. No. You merely allowed me to commit every necessary sin while you preserved the luxury of hating me. Caelan's claws emerged fully. The guards raised their spears. Lyra regained enough strength to stand. Her mind rang with the voices of distant wolves. The crown fragments at her feet had begun to move toward her as if pulled by an invisible force. She stared at Garrick. Who am I? His answer came without hesitation. The last mistake of a dead queen, Caelan Lunit. The priests struck their staffs against the floor. Silver chains erupted from the walls and wrapped around his arms, throat, and chest. Caelan roared as the enchanted metal burned his skin. 6 guards pulled him backward. Lyra reached for him, but Garrick caught her by the hair and forced her to her knees. Caelan's monstrous howl shook the chamber. "Release her." Garrick pressed a blade beneath Lyra's chin. "You once asked why I could not permit the wild court to survive," he said to Caelan. "Look at you. One touch from its air, and the curse in your blood awakens. If she lives, the royal wolves will abandon our line. Every pack conquered by your ancestors will rise. The kingdom will tear itself apart. She has done nothing. Blood does not need intention." Lyra looked past Garrick toward Caelan. His face had partially changed. One side remained human. The other had become the terrible head of an ash-gray wolf. Yet his blackened eye held no hunger when he looked at her. Only fear. Not fear of her. Fear for her. "You recognized me," Lyra whispered. Caelan stopped fighting the chain. The guilt in his remaining human eye answered before he spoke. "Yes." "How long?" 7 years. The chamber seemed to tilt. Lyra had first seen Caelan 7 years earlier after he returned from his first border war. She had been 12, thin from fever, carrying linen across the south courtyard. He had paused his horse and stared at her as though he had seen a ghost. She had remembered that look for years. "You knew," she said. "You knew what I was, and you left me among servants. I kept Garrick from finding you. You let me believe no one wanted me. I was trying to keep you alive." The wound opened so quickly that Lyra could not breathe. All the years of questions, every punishment she had endured, every night she had wondered why she had been born unwanted. He had known, and he had watched. Garrick leaned closer. "Your prince was never your rescuer, child. He was merely a more sentimental jailer." Caelan pulled against the chains until smoke rose from his flesh. "Lyra, listen to me. If my father had learned you survived—" "Your father?" The white she-wolf rammed the cage. The iron bars bent. Garrick drove the blade into Lyra's shoulder. Pain flashed white. Her blood struck the floor. The cage exploded. The she-wolf crossed the chamber like a winter storm. Guards screamed. Priests scattered. Garrick released Lyra and raised his sword, but the beast did not attack him. It stood over Lyra. Silver light poured from its wound. The wolf's body began to dissolve into moonlit mist. For one heartbeat, Queen Alindra appeared in its place. She was tall, dark-haired, and crowned in antlers. Blood covered her white gown. Her blue eyes were the same eyes Lyra saw each morning in the polished kitchen silver. "My little heart," the spirit whispered. Lyra reached toward her. Alindra touched 2 fingers to Lyra's burning crescent mark. Memory struck like lightning. A cradle beneath cedar trees. Her mother singing while wolves slept around them. Caelan, as a boy, standing beside the cradle, solemnly promising, "No one will ever harm her." Soldiers breaking through the wild court gates. King Edric driving a silver blade into Queen Alindra's chest. Garrick taking the infant from her dying arm. Young Caelan following the soldiers through the snow and finding the baby hidden inside a supply cart, his hands wrapping Lyra in his cloak, his frightened voice ordering an old housekeeper to give the child a false name, his promise that he would return for her when he became strong enough to challenge his father. Years passing, wars multiplying, the curse consuming him, the promise remaining unfulfilled. Lyra opened her eyes. Queen Alindra was gone. The white wolf had vanished with her. Only broken chains remained. Garrick stared at Lyra's glowing mark. "Kill her." The guards hesitated. "Now." Caelan broke one arm free. His claws tore through a priest's staff, but another silver chain wrapped around his throat and dragged him down. Lyra rose unsteadily. The blood from her shoulder ran along her hand. She felt no hidden strength rushing into her body, no sudden mastery over magic. She remained a wounded servant surrounded by armed men, but she remembered her mother, and for the first time in her life, she knew she had not been abandoned. "You are afraid of me," Lyra said to Garrick. "I am afraid of what kingdoms become when beasts choose their rulers. Perhaps they choose better than men." Garrick struck her across the face. The guards seized her. Caelan's roar followed Lyra up the stairs. By morning, the entire palace knew that the nameless maid had entered the Forbidden Tower. By noon, the story had changed. Lyra had not found a chained wolf. She had performed blood magic. She had not been attacked by guards. She had attempted to murder Lord Garrick. She was not Queen Alindra's stolen daughter. She was an imposter using forbidden symbols to claim a dead bloodline. Garrick moved swiftly because he understood that truth mattered less than the first story repeated loudly enough. He summoned the royal council. Temple priests displayed the broken crown. Servants were questioned. Several swore they had seen Lyra enchanting animals. Others claimed she had bewitched Caelan. No one mentioned that those witnesses had families living on royal land. Caelan was confined to his chambers under the pretense that his curse had worsened. Lyra was dragged into the throne hall wearing an iron collar. The court gathered to judge her. At the far end of the hall, King Edric's throne stood empty. Garrick presided beneath it. Noble alphas filled the benches. Pack leaders watched from the galleries, eager to see whether the royal house had finally lost control of its own palace. Lyra stood alone on the moonstone floor. Her shoulder had been bound poorly. Dried blood stiffened her dress. She searched for Caelan despite herself. He was not there. Garrick presented the chart. This woman entered the palace under a false name, corrupted sacred beasts, trespassed beneath the western tower, and spilled royal blood while attempting to awaken a forbidden claim to the throne. "I entered the palace as an infant," Lyra said. "The name was given to me." Murmurs moved through the chamber. Garrick's eyes narrowed. "You admit the identity is false." "I admit that someone erased the true one." A few counselors shifted uncomfortably. Garrick raised Queen Elindra's broken crown. This relic belonged to the leader of a rebel bloodline responsible for thousands of deaths. She was a queen. She called herself one. The wolves called her one. A nobleman laughed. "Then perhaps wolves should sit on the council." Lyra turned toward him. They could hardly govern with less honor. The laughter died. Garrick descended from the dais. "Your talent for defiance does not transform fantasy into blood. No, blood does that." She pulled the cloth from her shoulder and let one red drop fall onto the moonstone floor. Nothing happened. Garrick smiled. The watching nobles began to whisper. Lyra had expected the symbols to awaken as they had beneath the tower. Instead, the hall remained silent. No wolves howled. No silver fire appeared. The humiliation was deliberate. Garrick had chosen a chamber sealed against wild court magic. "You see?" he said gently. A frightened servant repeating stories placed in her mind by a cursed beast. Uncertainty entered the faces around her. Even Lyra felt it. What if the vision had been manipulated? What if grief and pain had created a history she wanted to believe? Then the throne hall doors opened. Caelan entered. He wore black armor and a high collar that concealed the burns around his throat. Royal guards surrounded him, though no chains were visible. His expression revealed nothing. Hope rose inside Lyra before she could stop it. Garrick turned. "You were ordered to rest. I came to witness the judgment." "Then speak. Has this woman used forbidden power upon you?" The entire court waited. Caelan's gaze found Lyra. She remembered him as a boy beside her cradle, remembered his promise, remembered 7 years of silence after recognizing her. He had saved her life once. Then he had hidden her so completely that she had almost disappeared inside the lie. "Answer," Garrick commanded. Caelan's hands closed at his side. "She entered the sealed tower," he said. Lyra's hope fractured. She awakened the prisoner beneath it. The court erupted in alarm. Garrick lifted his chin. "And did she provoke your transformation?" Caelan looked at her for one final, unbearable moment. "Yes." The word destroyed what remained. Garrick turned toward the council. "Royal law is clear. Forbidden blood that commands beasts cannot be permitted within the walls of the crown." A counselor rose. "If she claims the wild court, let its creatures judge her." Another voice answered, "Send her to the pit." The proposal spread quickly. The royal wolf pit had once been used to test warriors accused of cowardice. Now it housed beasts captured during northern campaigns, wolves too old, violent, or unnatural to join trained packs. No unarmed prisoner had survived more than a minute. Garrick pretended to consider. A fitting judgment. If she is truly the heir she claims to be, the wild beasts will recognize her. If she is an impostor, the kingdom will be protected from her deception. Lyra looked at Caelan. He stood motionless beneath the banner. She understood then that he had made his choice, not because he believed Garrick, because he was still afraid. Afraid of his father, afraid of losing the throne, afraid of the curse that awakened when he touched her. He had protected her only as long as doing so required secrecy. Now that the kingdom was watching, he had allowed them to condemn her. Lyra lifted her chin. I accept. For the first time, Caelan's control broke. No. The word rolled through the chamber with alpha force. Several wolves among the nobles lowered their heads instinctively. Garrick turned. You testified against her. I testified that she entered the tower. I did not consent to an execution. You do not yet wear the crown. Consent is not yours to give. Caelan moved toward the dais. Guards stepped between them. The black veins reappeared along his hand. Garrick saw them and lowered his voice. Challenge the council now, and they will witness what you are. You will lose the army before sunset. Your father's rivals will divide the kingdom. Thousands will die for one woman. Caelan stopped. Lyra watched the conflict in his face. For one terrible instant, she wanted him to choose her anyway. She wanted the prince from the memory to fulfill his promise. She wanted him to tear down the council, break her collar, and prove that 7 years of silence had not been cowardice. But Caelan had spent his life carrying a kingdom that would devour weakness, and once again, he remained still. Lyra turned away before he could see the last of her trust disappear. The execution was announced for moonrise. The nobles filled the arena long before the torches were lit. Snow fell through the open roof. Vendors sold heated wine outside the gates. Noble families brought children to witness the destruction of forbidden blood. Priests blessed the iron bars while handlers starved the wolves to increase their aggression. Lyra waited in a stone chamber beneath the pit. Her wrists were chained behind her. The iron collar carried temple markings that prevented shifting, though she had never shifted in her life. The door opened. Caelan entered alone. Lyra did not look at him. I have little time, he said. So do I. His breath caught. He approached, but stopped before coming close enough to touch her. I could not defend you in the throne hall. You could. You chose not to. If I had challenged Garrick there, the council would have removed me. The army would split between royal bloodlines. My father's loyalists would seize the capital, and that frightened you more than watching me die. Yes, the honesty made her turn. Caelan's face was pale beneath the torchlight. Yes, he repeated, because if the kingdom falls into civil war, the wild court survivors Garrick has spent years hunting will be slaughtered before I can reach them. Every person I have protected through silence will die. Protected. The word tasted bitter. You left me scrubbing floors beneath the men who murdered my mother. I did. You watched them strike me. I punished everyone I learned about. You never told me why, because attention from me would have exposed you. You could have taken me away. My father had spies in every allied court. Garrick controlled the roads. I was 19 and already losing control of the beast inside me. I believed secrecy was the only shield I could give you. You believed wrong. I know. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small blade made of dark bone. Caelan placed it on the bench beside her. The collar is locked with temple iron. That blade can break it. Lyra stared at the weapon. Why give it to me now? Because the pit walls are carved with the same symbols as the tower. Garrick believes they will suppress your blood. He does not know my mother damaged the southern seal before she died. What does that mean? It means your power may answer inside the pit. I do not know how to use it. You do not command the beast through force. Your mother never did. Then how? She listened. Lyra's anger faltered. Caelan looked toward the ceiling as the crowd began chanting above them. I saw Queen Alindra once after the wild court fell. My father kept her beneath the palace for information. She told me the beasts followed her because she carried their pain without trying to own it. And you believe sending me among starving wolves would awaken that gift? His jaw tightened. I tried to stop the judgment. You submitted when it became costly. I am not asking you to forgive me. What are you asking? To survive long enough to hate me tomorrow. A horn sounded above. The gatekeeper shouted for the prisoner. Caelan moved closer. The monster beneath his skin stirred, filling the chamber with the scent of ash and winter forests. Lyra felt the bond between them again, dangerous, wounded, unfinished. You knew I was your mate, she whispered. His silence confirmed it. How long? Since the courtyard 7 years ago. Before you knew who I was. The bond did not care about your name. But you did. I cared enough to fear what claiming you would cause. That is not devotion. No. His silver eyes held hers. It was cowardice wearing the face of protection. The admission cut deeper than an excuse would have. The gatekeeper entered with 4 guards. Time. Caelan stepped back. Lyra was led toward the arena tunnel. At the gate, she looked over her shoulder. "Will you remain on the balcony?" Pain crossed his face. "Yes." "Then watch carefully." The iron gate opened. The roar of the crowd struck her like physical force. Lyra walked barefoot into the pit. Lord Garrick stood above her beside the royal throne. Caelan had taken his place at the railing, black armor bright beneath the torches. The handlers unlocked the first beast gate. Greyfang emerged carrying something between his teeth. The crowd expected blood. Lyra expected death. The giant black wolf crossed the sand and stopped before her. She listened. Beneath its growl, beneath its hunger and old fury, she felt memories, chain, whips. A forest burned to drive its pack from the mountains. Cubs taken by royal hunters. A silver-crowned warrior dying with one hand buried in Greyfang's fur. Lyra sank slowly to her knees. "I am sorry," she whispered. Greyfang's ruined eye closed. The object in its mouth fell at her feet, a crushed silver crown. Behind the beast gate, another wolf howled, then another. The southern wall flashed with pale light. A crack appeared through the suppression seal. Garrick leaned forward. Caelan gripped the balcony railing. The second wolf entered, dragging a rusted sword. The third brought a broken breastplate. The fourth carried the white bones of an arm still wrapped in royal chainmail. The court fell silent. More gates opened. Dozens of wolves flooded the arena. They circled Lyra without touching her. One placed an ancient shield behind her. Another laid a curved rib bone beside it. Greyfang lifted the broken crown and set it above the shield. Piece by piece, the beasts built a seat from the remains of those who had tried to conquer them. Armor formed the back. Bones became the arm. Broken crowns rose like silver thorn. Lyra stood surrounded by wolves while the structure grew behind her. Lord Garrick shouted to the handlers, "Release the northern beasts." The final gate opened. 3 enormous white wolves entered. The largest bore antler-like horns of black bone. The nobles screamed and pushed away from the railings. Caelan stared at the creature. "Elindra's guardians," he breathed. The horned wolf approached Lyra. Its golden eyes held a sorrow older than the palace. "Queen's daughter." Lyra heard the words inside her mind. The iron collar burned around her throat. She remembered Caelan's bone blade hidden against her palm. One movement severed the temple lock. The collar struck the sand. Silver light erupted from the crescent behind her ear. Every torch in the arena went out. Moonlight poured through the open roof, bright as dawn, illuminating Lyra at the center of the pit. The wolves lowered their bodies. Greyfang pressed his scarred head against her wounded hand. The horned guardian turned toward the throne the beasts had built. Lyra understood. She climbed the steps of bone and armor. Blood stained her torn gray dress. Her hands trembled. She possessed no crown, no army, and no knowledge of how to rule the power awakening around her. Yet when she sat, every wild wolf in the arena bowed. A howl rose from beneath the palace. Hundreds answered from beyond the city walls. Then the trained royal wolves stationed among the guards broke formation. One by one, they turned away from Lord Garrick. They descended toward the pit. The court watched in terror as the kingdom's beasts abandoned the royal house and bowed before the forgotten maid. Lyra lifted her eyes toward the balcony. Lord Garrick had gone white. Royal Alpha Caelan stood perfectly still, staring at the bloodied woman seated upon the throne of his fallen ancestors. For 7 years, he had hidden her from the kingdom. Now every wolf in the realm knew her name, and from the highest tower of the palace came the dying King Edric's scream. "She is alive." The scream from the highest tower cut through the arena like a blade. For one suspended moment, no one moved. Then chaos began. Nobles surged away from the railings. Guards shouted conflicting orders. Temple priests raised silver staffs toward the pit, while the royal wolves ignored every command and continued descending the stone ramps toward Lyra. Lord Garrick turned toward the tower. "Seal the palace," he ordered. "No one leaves the arena." The guards nearest him hesitated. Their wolves had abandoned them. Without those beasts, The authority of the royal army suddenly looked thinner than the banners hanging above it. Caelan moved first. He vaulted over the balcony railing. The fall would have broken an ordinary man, but he landed in the sand on one knee, black armor striking the ground hard enough to scatter dust around him. The wolves turned as he rose. Some growled, others lowered their head. Greyfang stepped between Caelan and the throne. The old beast's lips peeled back from broken teeth. Caelan stopped. He did not reach for his sword. "I will not harm her." Greyfang did not move. Lyra watched from the throne of bones and ruined crowns. Her shoulder still bled. The silver light behind her ear had faded to a soft glow, but the voices of the wolves remained inside her mind. Fear, rage, recognition. Beneath all of it, she felt Caelan's ash wolf pressing against his human body like a storm trapped behind a door. It did not want to fight Greyfang. It wanted to kneel. Caelan looked up at her. The arena that had been prepared for her execution now held the entire court as witnesses. For the first time, he could not protect her through secrecy. He could not delay his choice behind strategy or fear. Lord Garrick saw the danger in his silence. "She has bewitched the beasts," he shouted. "Do not mistake obedience for legitimacy. Wild creatures follow blood and hunger. They do not choose rulers." The horned white guardian lifted its head. A deep growl rolled through the arena. Several nobles retreated from the railing. Lyra rose from the throne. Her legs nearly failed beneath her. Greyfang immediately moved beside her, offering the strength of his shoulder without being asked. She rested one bloodied hand against his fur. The gesture silenced the pit. "You said the beasts would judge me," Lyra called to Garrick. "Now that they have, you reject the judgment." Garrick's mouth tightened. "They have proved only that forbidden blood remains dangerous." "No, they have proved you knew exactly what I was." A murmur spread through the gallery. Lyra descended one step from the throne. "You placed the broken crown beneath the tower. You opened the path. You arranged witnesses before I had even been accused. You did not discover an impostor. You prepared an execution for an heir." Garrick looked toward the counselors. "She speaks through enchantment." "Then answer without fear," Lyra said. "Who brought me into this palace 19 years ago?" He did not answer. The court noticed. Caelan turned toward his uncle. "Answer her." Garrick's expression hardened. "You have forgotten your position." "No." Caelan's voice deepened. "I have finally remembered it." Black veins surfaced beneath his hand. The nearest guard stepped back. Garrick pointed at him. "Look at what she has done to you. The curse is already taking hold." Lyra felt the ash wolf surge again. This time Caelan did not hide his claw. "She did not create this," he said. "My father did." A shock moved through the arena. From the tower came another scream, followed by the distant crash of breaking stone. Caelan looked upward. "My father is trying to reach the lower sanctum." Garrick went still. That reaction told Lyra more than word. "What is beneath the palace?" she asked. Caelan looked at her. "The heart den." The name moved through the wolves. A vision entered Lyra's mind. Roots twisting through black stone, ancient bones buried in circles, a silver pool beneath the city, and something enormous sleeping beneath it. Greyfang whimpered. The horned guardian turned toward the palace gate. "What is the heart den?" Lyra demanded. Caelan answered carefully. "The first royal packs bound their blood to an ancient wolf beneath this mountain. Every crowned alpha since then has drawn authority from that bond. And my mother? She could speak to the creature without blood chains." Garrick descended from the balcony steps, abandoning the pretense of ceremony. "That creature is not a guardian," he said. "It is a weapon. The Beast Queen intended to free it and end the royal line." Lyra looked at him. "Did she tell you that?" "She did not need to. I saw what happened when wild packs sensed her presence. Commands failed, borders weakened, soldiers questioned their oaths. They questioned men who ruled them through fear. They questioned the only order preventing this kingdom from collapsing into pack war." His answer carried genuine conviction. That made him more dangerous. Garrick did not believe himself cruel. He believed himself necessary. The palace shook. A line of dust fell from the arena wall. Caelan drew his sword. "My father has reached the sanctum." Garrick's composure broke. "He cannot open it alone. He has royal blood. He no longer has enough." The old lord's eyes moved toward Lyra. Understanding struck all three of them at once. The blood spilled from her shoulder, the awakened crown, the throne built in the pit. King Edric had not screamed because he feared her survival. He had felt her blood awaken the heart den. Garrick turned toward the guards. "Take her." No one moved. He seized the spear from the nearest soldier and threw it. Caelan shifted in front of Lyra. The weapon struck his chest. The silver head pierced black armor and drove deep beneath his collarbone. Lyra screamed his name. Caelan staggered but did not fall. His blood struck the sand. The ash wolf inside him erupted. Bones cracked. Black-gray fur tore through his armor. His shoulders widened. His face stretched into something neither fully man nor beast. The scar across his throat blazed silver. The court recoiled in horror. Garrick stared down at him. "There is your future, king." Caelan tore the spear from his body. His transformed hand crushed the shaft. Temple priests rushed toward the pit, chanting binding words. Silver chains fired from their staffs and wrapped around his arm. Caelan roared. The sound shook the galleries. The royal wolves answered, but Lyra felt their confusion. His beast carried royal blood and old pain. It was powerful enough to command them, yet poisoned by the chains beneath the mountain. Lyra stepped down from the throne. Greyfang blocked her path. "He will lose himself," she whispered. The beast showed her an image, Caelan as a boy beside a dead wolf, silver liquid being poured into a wound at his throat. King Edric holding him down while Garrick watched. The royal curse had not been inherited. It had been placed inside him. Lyra pushed past Greyfang. Caelan broke one chain and struck a priest across the pit. The man hit the wall and collapsed. Another priest raised a silver blade. Lyra caught his wrist. The priest stared at her. She had no training, no hidden combat skill, and no sudden strength beyond her own desperate resolve. But the horned guardian moved behind her. The priest released the blade. Lyra turned toward Caelan. His black eyes found her. For one heartbeat, the monster did not recognize her. Then his nostrils flared. The mate bond burned between them. He lunged. The crowd screamed. Lyra did not move. Caelan's claws stopped against her throat. One touch could have opened her skin. Instead, his monstrous hand trembled. "You know me," she whispered. His teeth bared. The ash wolf fought against the silver chains and the poison rooted through his blood. Lyra lifted her hand and touched the scar along his throat. The world vanished. She stood inside the burning forest again. Only now she saw the memory clearly. Caelan was 12 years old, kneeling beside his mother. Queen Marith lay dying beneath the trees, her white dress black with blood. King Edric stood nearby with temple priests. Garrick held a silver bowl filled with the blood of the chained ancient wolf beneath the mountain. "You must bind the beast to the air," Edric ordered. "The royal packs are abandoning us." Marith reached toward her son. "No, he will not survive it. He does not need to survive as a man. He needs to rule as a weapon." Caelan struggled while soldiers held him. Garrick looked away as the priests cut the boy's throat and poured the silver blood into the wound. The ancient beast screamed beneath the earth. The curse entered him. Then the memory shifted. Young Caelan wandered through the aftermath of the Wild Court massacre. He found an infant hidden beneath dead soldiers and recognized Queen Elindra's crescent mark. His ash wolf, newly awakened and already in agony, became still. "Mate." The boy wrapped the child in his cloak. "I will keep you alive," he promised, "even if you hate me for how." The vision shattered. Lyra returned to the arena with tears on her face. Caelan remained before her, half transformed and shaking. She understood him now, not enough to forgive, but enough to see the full shape of his failure. He had been made into a monster before he was old enough to choose. Every act of protection afterward had been shaped by terror of becoming his father. "Your beast is not dying," Lyra whispered. "It is imprisoned." The silver scar pulsed beneath her palm. Caelan's claws withdrew slightly. Garrick saw the chain. "Kill them both." This time several guards obeyed. Not because they believed him, because panic was easier than uncertainty. They rushed the pit. The wolves moved. Greyfang struck the first soldier. The horned guardian slammed another into the wall. Royal wolves tore spears from armored hands without closing their jaws on flesh. Lyra felt their intentions with impossible clarity. They were waiting for her will, not command, choice. She could let them kill everyone who had gathered to watch her die. The power was there, a dark, satisfying temptation. She looked at Garrick. He had destroyed her family. He had manipulated her life. He had placed her in the pit expecting beasts to scatter her bone. One thought could end him. Her mother's voice moved through memory. Carry their pain without owning them. Lyra raised her hand. Do not kill. Every wolf stopped. The command did not crack like Alpha Force. It passed through the arena like wind through winter grass. The beasts released the soldiers. The court stared. Garrick's face changed. For the first time, he understood why Queen Alindra had been impossible to defeat through ordinary power. Lyra did not dominate the wild wolves. They trusted her. Caelan fell to one knee. His transformation began to recede, though the wound from the spear still poured blood. Lyra caught him before he struck the ground. His head rested against her shoulder. I failed you, he said, voice rough with pain. Yes. He closed his eyes. She had expected denial. Instead, he nodded once. The palace shook again. A section of the northern wall split open. Cold silver light poured through the crack. From beneath the earth came a howl so vast that every wolf in the arena flattened itself against the sand. The heart den had opened. King Edric appeared on the tower balcony. He no longer looked like a dying man. He stood unnaturally straight in a long white robe stained with silver blood. His hair hung loose around a face made gaunt by years of illness. Behind him, black roots crawled across the stone. In one hand, he held a ritual blade. In the other, he gripped the old housekeeper who had raised Lyra. Mistress Oren's gray hair had been torn free from its braid. Blood marked her mouth. Lyra Rose. The old woman looked down into the pit. I am sorry, she called. King Edric pressed the blade to her throat. You always were. Caelan tried to stand. His wounded leg failed. Lyra felt his fury through the bond. The king smiled. Bring the girl to the heart den, or the servant dies. Garrick looked toward his brother. You said the sanctum required her blood, not her presence. Edric's eyes were fever bright. I lead. A silence passed between the brothers. Garrick had believed he was controlling the final pieces. Instead, he had been another one. Edric dragged Mistress Oren away from the balcony. The tower doors slammed shut. Lyra moved toward the arena gate. Caelan seized her wrist. You cannot go alone. You cannot walk. I can crawl. You will do neither. His grip tightened. He needs you to free the ancient wolf. Then I will reach it before he can use me. You do not know the tunnels. Garrick stepped into the pit. Every wolf turned toward him. He looked older now, stripped of the certainty that had carried him through 19 years of bloodshed. I do. Lyra's gaze hardened. You expect me to trust you? No. He removed the council chain from his neck and dropped it into the sand. I expect you to understand that if Edric takes full control of the heart beast, there will be no court left to judge any of us. Caelan forced himself upright using his sword. You helped him bind it. I helped him preserve the kingdom. You helped him curse a child. Garrick's jaw worked. I believe the royal line required a living weapon. And now? Now I have seen what that weapon becomes when it chooses not to kill. He looked at Lyra. The words were not an apology. Men like Garrick did not know how to build one, but doubt had entered him, and doubt was the first crack in fanaticism. Lyra turned to Greyfang. Guard the arena. Let no one follow unless they come without weapons. The black wolf lowered its head. She looked at the horned guardian. Come with me. The beast moved to her side. Caelan stepped forward. Lyra faced him. You are too wounded. I will not remain behind again. This is not the moment to prove devotion. No. His silver eyes held hers. It is the moment to stop using devotion as something I promise later. Lyra wanted to refuse. Then she remembered the boy in the forest. The boy had made a promise. The man had broken it through fear. Perhaps love did not begin when promises were spoken. Perhaps it began when excuses ended. She tore a strip from her ruined dress and bound the wound beneath his collarbone. Caelan watched her hand. This does not mean I forgive you. I know. It does not mean I trust you. I know. It means I need your sword. The faintest shadow of warmth entered his expression. You have it. Garrick led them beneath the arena through a passage hidden behind the northern beast gate. The horned guardian followed, its paws silent over the black stone. Temple symbols covered the walls. Many had cracked when Lyra's power awakened. They descended below the palace foundation. The deeper they went, the warmer the air became. Roots pierced the ceiling. Silver liquid flowed through narrow channels carved into the floor. The walls pulsed faintly, like flesh around a buried heart. Lyra heard the ancient wolf before they reached it. Not a howl, breathing. Each breath caused the mountain to tremble. Garrick stopped before a circular door made of bone. There are 3 chambers beyond this point. Edric will have opened the first with royal blood. He needs Lyra to enter the last. How do you know? Caelan asked. Because Queen Alindra told us before she died. Lyra's hand tightened. You spoke to my mother? Garrick did not look away. For months. What did she say? That one day her daughter would return, and the beasts would build a throne from the bones of false king. The prophecy moved coldly through Lyra. You knew. I knew the possibility. You murdered her anyway. Garrick's face hardened against emotion. Your mother had gathered every wild pack north of the Ash River. Edric believed she planned invasion. Did she? No. The answer came quietly. She planned to free the heart beast and break the blood chains binding wolves to royal commands. I believed that would destroy the kingdom. And now? Garrick looked at the horned guardian. Now I wonder whether the kingdom deserved to survive unchanged. A cry echoed beyond the bone door. Mistress Orn. Lyra pressed her palm against the barrier. The door opened. The first chamber was filled with dead priests. Their bodies lay across the silver channels, faces frozen in terror. Black roots had burst through their chests. At the center stood King Edric. Mistress Orn knelt beside him, wrists bound. Behind them, a vast archway opened into darkness. Edric smiled at Lyra. My lost princess. Lyra entered with Caelan beside her. Garrick remained near the doorway. You look well for a dying man, Caelan said. I was never dying. The truth landed harder than a shout. Caelan stared at his father. Edric touched the silver veins along his own neck. I was changing. The heart beast rejected my blood after Alindra cursed the bond. I needed another vessel. Caelan's face went still. You placed it in me. You were born for succession. You were feeding your corruption into your own son. A king feeds many things into his heirs. Lyra moved toward Mistress Orn. Edric raised the ritual blade. One more step. She stopped. The old housekeeper's eyes filled with tear. I should have told you, she whispered. You kept me alive. I also kept you obedient. You were afraid. I was ashamed. Edric laughed softly. How touching. The servant confesses while the princess pretends compassion is strength. Lyra looked at him. Compassion is the reason you are still breathing. His smile disappeared. Caelan moved slightly in front of her. Edric studied him. You always did stand between danger and what you wanted, never understanding that a king must stand above both. You taught me what kings should never become. I taught you survival. No. Lyra did. The mate bond pulsed. Edric sensed it. His eyes narrowed. So the bloodlines joined after all. He cut Mistress Orn's palm and pressed it against the first silver channel. The old woman cried out. She was present when Queen Alindra sealed the final gate, Edric said. Her blood opens the path. Yours will open the prison. Silver light rushed through the floor. The dark archway awakened. Beyond it lay a cavern larger than the throne hall. Chains as thick as trees stretched across the darkness. At their center, something opened one eye. The eye was silver. It was larger than a shield. Lyra could not see the full body, only the outline of a wolf so immense that its ribs formed arches beneath the mountain. The heart beast. Its pain struck her mind. Centuries of crown, blood rituals, alphas forcing commands through its chained body. Royal wolves bred to obey. Wild packs hunted because they could still refuse. Lyra staggered. Caelan caught her. The ancient beast sensed him. Its eye darkened. A chain connected the creature's throat to Caelan's scar. The curse inside him was not merely drawn from the beast. It was a fragment of its rage. Edric stepped behind Lyra and drove the ritual blade into her side. Caelan roared. Lyra gasped as the king pulled the blade free and let her blood spill into the final silver channel. The cavern erupted. The bone door slammed shut behind them. Black roots wrapped around Garrick and threw him against the wall. Caelan attacked his father. Edric spoke one word in the old Alpha tongue. The chain attached to Caelan's throat tightened. He fell, clawing at the silver scar. His body transformed violent. The ash wolf tore through his clothes and armor until a massive gray-black beast crouched where the man had stood. Silver cracks burned across its fur. Edric raised his hand. Kneel. Caelan's wolf collapsed. Lyra pressed both hands over the wound in her side. Her blood continued moving through the channel. The heart beast pulled against its chain. Stone split above them. Edric turned toward the ancient creature. Wake! The silver eye opened fully. Every wolf in the kingdom screamed. Lyra felt them all. Wolves in palace kennels, wild packs in northern forests, mothers beside newborn cubs, old beasts dying beneath snow. They all felt the chain, and through Lyra, they felt one another. Edric smiled as power filled the chamber. Do you understand now? With this creature awake, no alpha will challenge me. No pack will rebel. Every wolf will obey one crown. The heart-beast's gaze moved toward Lyra, daughter of the Unchained. The voice nearly shattered her mind. Free me. Lyra looked at the chain. Each one carried a royal symbol. There were hundreds. She had no sword capable of cutting them. No spell, no knowledge. Only the gift Caelan had described. She listened. The chains were not locked by iron. They were locked by obedience. Every generation of royal wolves had surrendered a piece of will into the bond. Every forced kneeling strengthened it. Every command spoken through blood reinforced the prison. To free the heart beast, she would need the wolves of the kingdom to refuse. Edric sensed her understanding. He seized Mistress Orin by the hair and lifted the blade. Command them. Lyra looked at him. What? Take control of the bond. You have the wild court blood. Command every wolf to accept me as king. You cannot force her, Garrick said from the wall. Edric drove a black root through his brother's shoulder. Garrick screamed. I have forced stronger rulers than her. Caelan's wolf struggled to rise. Edric tightened the throat chain. The beast collapsed again. Lyra felt Caelan's mind breaking beneath the pressure. His human memories flickered. A courtyard, a servant girl with a hidden crescent, a promise beside a cradle, her name repeated like a final prayer. Lyra moved toward him. Edric raised the blade against Mistress Orin's throat. Choose carefully. The old woman looked at Lyra. For 19 years, she had been the only mother Lyra remembered. She had hidden the truth, but she had also stood between a forgotten child and a murderous court. She had fed Lyra during winters when servants went hungry. She had sat beside her through fever. She had taught her that dignity could survive even where power did not. Lyra could not let her die, but she could not enslave every wolf to save one life. Mistress Orin understood. She closed her eyes. Do not trade the kingdom for me. Edric cut her throat. Lyra screamed. Caelan's wolf surged upward with such force that the chain tore flesh from his neck. Garrick roared and drove his body against the roots holding him. Mistress Orin fell. Lyra caught her before she struck the silver channel. Blood spread across the old woman's dress. Her eyes opened once. You were always wanted, she whispered. Then she was gone. Something inside Lyra broke. Not into rage, into clarity. She laid Mistress Orin gently on the stone. Edric raised both hands. Submit. The heart beast pulled against its prison. Caelan's wolf fought the chain. Garrick bled against the wall. The mountain began to collapse. Lyra stood. Her wound burned. Her dress was soaked red. Grief pressed against her lungs so heavily that each breath hurt. She reached for every wolf she could feel. Not as servant, not as weapon, as witnesses. You have been commanded for generations. The thought crossed mountain. You have been taught that strength means obedience to blood. The royal wolves heard her. The wild packs heard her. Caelan heard her beneath the curse. I will not command you to kneel. Edric's expression changed. Lyra looked directly at the heart beast. I ask you to choose. Silence spread through the bond. Then Greyfang stood in the arena above. He turned away from the royal throne. The horned guardian raised its head and howled. Across the kingdom, wolves began to refuse. Royal war beasts tore command collars from their necks. Pack wolves stepped away from their alphas. Mothers shielded cubs from handlers. Old beasts lifted their heads from snow and answered. One by one, the chains around the heart beast cracked. Edric shouted the old command. Kneel! No wolf obeyed. The first chain shattered, then another. The ancient beast rose. The cavern exploded with silver light. Edric was thrown backward. Caelan's throat chain broke. His wolf launched across the chamber and struck his father. They crashed against the stone altar. Edric drove the ritual blade into Caelan's side. The ash wolf bit down on the king's arm. Bone snapped. Edric screamed. Black roots surged from the floor and wrapped around Caelan's body. Lyra ran toward them. Garrick tore himself free from the wall, seized a fallen priest's sword, and cut through the roots. Caelan fell. Edric turned on his brother. You weak fool. Garrick stood between him and Lyra. No, he said. I was weak when I called fear duty. Edric drove the ritual blade into Garrick's stomach. The old lord gasped. He caught Edric's wrist with both hands and held him in place. Now, girl. Lyra reached Caelan. His wolf body was fading between forms. Blood covered the silver scars along his fur. His eyes found her. The ancient fragment inside him was still chained to the heart beast. Lyra placed one hand over his throat. "You have to let it go." His mind answered through the bond. "It is part of me. It was put inside you. It kept me alive. It also kept you afraid." The ash wolf trembled. "Without it, I may lose everything." Lyra bent over him. "No. Without it, you will finally discover what remains when fear is no longer choosing for you." Caelan looked toward his father, then toward the crown-shaped scars burning across the cavern floor. His beast lowered its head to Lyra, not in submission, in trust. "Take it." Lyra pulled. Silver fire erupted from Caelan's throat. He screamed as the curse left him. The ash-colored spirit rose above his body, enormous and furious, connected to the heart beast by a final chain. Lyra reached into the spirit. Pain tore through her. She saw every war Caelan had fought. Every night he chained himself beneath the palace so he would not kill anyone. Every council meeting where Garrick threatened the hidden wild court survivors. Every moment he passed Lyra in the halls and forced himself not to look at her too long. She also saw his failures. The days he could have spoken, the punishments he had learned about too late. The moment in the throne hall when he chose the kingdom's fragile order over her life. She did not erase any of it. Love without truth was only another prison. Lyra opened her hand. The ash wolf spirit turned toward the heart beast. "You are not his curse," she whispered. "You are your own pain." The final chain broke. The spirit returned to the ancient wolf. Caelan collapsed in human form. The heart beast rose to its full height. The mountain could barely contain it. Its silver eyes turned toward King Edric. The old king tried to command it. Nothing happened. Garrick still held him. Edric struck his brother again and tore free. He ran toward the open passage. The heart beast lowered one enormous paw. It did not crush him. It blocked his path. Edric turned toward Lyra. "Control it." She stared at the man who had killed her mother, cursed Caelan, murdered Mistress Orin, and built a kingdom upon chained will. "No." The ancient wolf opened its mouth. Edric screamed as silver light consumed him. When the light faded, nothing remained except the ritual blade and a cracked royal ring. Garrick fell to his knee. The cavern began to collapse. Lyra dragged Caelan upright. He could barely stand. Garrick pressed one hand over his wound. "Go." Lyra looked at him. "You can still walk." "No." The black roots had wrapped around his legs. He had cut Caelan free but allowed the prison to take him instead. Caelan reached toward his uncle. Garrick shook his head. "I spent half my life protecting a throne from every threat except the men sitting on it." The stone above them split. Silver fire poured through the crack. "Do one thing I did not," Garrick told Caelan. "Build something that does not require monsters to survive." Caelan's face tightened. Despite everything, Garrick had raised him through wars, had taught him strategy, had become both jailer and shield after his mother's death. There was no time for forgiveness, only truth. "You should have chosen differently," Caelan said. Garrick gave a broken smile. "Yes." The heart beast pushed its massive head toward an opening in the cavern wall. A new passage formed through the stone. Lyra pulled Caelan toward it. Behind them, Garrick raised the fallen sword and cut the final black roots reaching for their back. The cavern collapsed. The last thing Lyra heard was his voice. "Go." They emerged beneath the arena as the palace foundation split. Wolves poured through the tunnels around them, guiding survivors toward the open grounds. Nobles fled into the snow. Guards carried wounded servants. Temple priests threw down their silver staffs. The throne tower collapsed behind the northern wall. The sound rolled across the city like thunder. Lyra and Caelan reached the arena floor beneath a sky turning pale with dawn. Greyfang ran toward them. The old wolf pressed against Lyra, then sniffed Caelan's throat. The silver scar had disappeared. Caelan swayed. Lyra caught him. He looked smaller without the curse, though no less powerful. More human, more vulnerable. His eyes were no longer cold silver. They had turned dark gray. "What happened to the heart beast?" he asked. Lyra looked toward the mountains. A vast silver shape moved through the clouds beyond the city wall. "Free." The wolves began to howl, not for conquest, for release. The sound spread across the capital until humans joined it with cries of shock, grief, and wonder. The court gathered slowly in the ruined arena. Counselors stood without their ceremonial seats. Pack leaders came without wolves chained beside them. Servants entered spaces previously forbidden to them because no guards remained willing to stop them. At the center stood the throne built in the pit, bones, armor, broken crowns. The kingdom waited for Lyra to sit. She did not. Instead, she climbed the steps and placed Queen Alindra's crushed crown upon the seat. This throne was built from the remains of those who believed power could only be taken, she said. Let it remain empty until this kingdom decides what power is for. A counselor stepped forward. You are the last heir of the wild court. I am. The beasts recognize you. They do. Then claim the crown. Lyra looked at the wolves gathered around the arena. No. Shock moved through the court. Caelan stood several steps behind her, one hand pressed against his wound. Lyra continued. My mother did not die so that I could replace one blood command with another. The wild packs will not belong to the palace. The royal wolves will no longer be bound by temple chains. Every pack will choose its own leaders, and every leader will answer before a council that includes those who carried the cost of their wars. One noble alpha laughed nervously. You expect servants and beasts to govern? I expect those who bleed for a kingdom to possess a voice within it. The horned guardian stepped beside her. The laughter stopped. Lyra turned toward Caelan. This includes the royal house. Every gaze followed hers. Caelan approached the throne. He removed the black and silver sword of House Valor from his belt and laid it on the sand. Then he knelt. The movement stunned the court more deeply than the wolves had. Royal alphas did not kneel publicly. Not to servants, not to rivals, not even to kings unless forced by blood command. Caelan bowed his head before Lyra. I knew who you were and hid the truth. I called it protection because I feared what honesty would cost me. When you needed me before the court, I chose delay. When you needed faith, I chose strategy. Lyra's throat tightened. He did not ask her to forget. He did not turn his guilt into a demand for comfort. I cannot undo what my silence allowed, he continued. I can only surrender the power that made silence seem necessary. He lifted his empty hand. If you ask me to leave, I will. If you ask me to stand trial, I will. If this kingdom permits me to serve it, I will do so without the chains my family used to rule. The wolves watched him. So did the people. Lyra descended from the throne. She stopped before him. You once told me the bond did not care about my name. It did not. But love must. Caelan raised his face. Yes, love must know who I am when I am powerless. It must recognize me when choosing me is dangerous. It must speak before the crowd, not only in hidden corridors. Yes, and it must understand that kneeling once does not repair 7 years. I understand. Lyra looked into the face of the man who had saved her as an infant, failed her as an adult, and finally chosen truth when it cost him everything. Her anger remained, so did her grief. Yet beneath both, the mate bond felt different, no longer like a chain, like a door. She held out her hand. Caelan stared at it. This is not forgiveness, she said. He placed his hand in hers. No. It is the beginning of whether you can earn it. He rose. The court exhaled, as though it had been holding one breath since the pit gates opened. The weeks that followed were harder than any coronation song would later admit. Freedom did not repair a kingdom overnight. Several noble packs rebelled when temple collars were abolished. Border commanders refused to accept authority from a provisional council. Priests fled with royal records. Garrick's supporters claimed Lyra had murdered the king through beast magic. But the wolves no longer offered commands issued through blood. Without that power, cruelty became much harder to disguise as law. Lyra opened the Western archives and found the names of wild court survivors sold into servitude or scattered among distant packs. She ordered each record copied publicly before the original ledgers could disappear. She did not take the royal bedchambers. She returned first to the servant wing, not because she wished to remain small, but because she refused to let the palace erase the woman she had been before discovering her blood. Mistress Oren was buried beneath cedar trees outside the city wall. No royal crest marked the grave. Lyra placed a simple stone there. She had the words carved herself. She kept the princess alive long enough to remember she was loved. Caelan came alone to the burial. His wounds had begun to heal. Without the curse, he slept for long hours and woke disoriented by the silence inside his own body. He stood beside Lyra beneath falling snow. I used to hear it every moment, he said. The ash wolf, its rage, its hunger. I thought losing it would make me weak. Do you feel weak? Yes. She looked at him. He gave a faint, honest smile. I also feel peaceful for the first time since I was 12. They remained beside the grave until sunset. Caelan did not touch her. That restraint became the first thing she trusted. In the months that followed, he never entered a room expecting her attention. He brought reports instead of promises. He accepted challenges from pack leaders without using alpha force. When former servants testified against noble houses, he stood beside them in open court. He did not ask Lyra to defend him when people called him the son of a tyrant. He defended them when they called her a beast witch. The mate bond deepened slowly. Sometimes it burned between them during council arguments. Sometimes Lyra felt his fear when she traveled beyond the walls. Sometimes he woke from dreams of the burning forest, and she sensed the old boy inside him searching for a cradle he had promised to protect. She did not always go to him. When she did, it was her choice. One winter night, nearly a year after the Wolf Pit judgment, Lyra entered the restored throne hall. The original throne had been removed. In its place stood a circular table made from the black stone of the arena walls. Seats surrounded it for pack leaders, village representatives, healers, soldiers, servants, and wild court elders. At the center of the hall remained the throne built by the beasts. No one sat upon it. Queen Alindra's broken crown rested on the highest point. Caelan stood beside the table wearing no royal armor. He carried no sword. "You summoned me," Lyra said. The council voted. On what? Whether the crown should continue. She approached. And? They voted to replace the monarchy with a covenant between the packs. Lyra studied him. You surrendered your claim. There was little left worth claiming. That has never stopped men before. No. He looked toward the bone throne. The council also voted that 2 guardians should protect the covenant, one chosen by the royal packs, one by the wild. Lyra understood. You accepted? Only if you do. She walked to the open window. Below, wolves moved freely through the palace grounds. Children from servant families played beside cubs once kept behind iron bars. Royal banners had been lowered, replaced by a silver crescent surrounding an open paw. Caelan came no closer than the distance she allowed. I do not want another title used to hide a cage, she said. Neither do I. And I will not become your Luna merely because the bond exists. I would never ask that. She turned. What would you ask? His guarded expression softened. For the chance to know you without secrets. The answer entered the quietest place in her heart. Not a throne, not obedience, not destiny. A chance. Lyra crossed the distance between them. She touched the place where the silver scar had once burned across his throat. Caelan's breath stopped. The mate bond opened. No curse followed, no command, only warmth. She felt his fear, his devotion, his regret, and the careful hope he had refused to name. He felt her grief, her anger, her strength, and the part of her that still remembered a lonely servant girl wondering why no one had ever come to claim her. Caelan lowered his forehead to hers. I see you, he whispered. Lyra closed her eyes. Then keep seeing me. His hand rose to her cheek but stopped before touching. She leaned into it. The kiss began softly, not like conquest, like permission. When he drew back, the horned guardian howled from the courtyard below. Other wolves answered across the city. Caelan smiled against her forehead. Do they approve? They do not belong to us. I am learning. Lyra laughed quietly for the first time in the throne hall. At the covenant ceremony in spring, she wore no jeweled crown. She chose a dark silver gown embroidered with cedar branches, and a narrow circlet made from Queen Alindra's broken antlers. Caelan wore black without the crest of House Valor. They stood together before the circular council. Not king in possession, not savior and rescued girl. Guardians chosen by a kingdom learning to exist without chain. Gravefang lay beside Lyra's feet. The old wolf's ruined eye remained fixed upon the nobles who had once chanted for her blood. The horned guardian stood behind the empty throne. When the covenant was signed, Caelan did not place a claim upon Lyra's throat. He offered his wrist. In the old wild court tradition, a bond was sealed only when both partners offered blood freely. Lyra cut his palm, then her own. Their hands joined. Silver light spread across the floor, but no wolf knelt. Instead, every beast in the hall raised its head, equal, awake, free. Caelan looked at her before the gathered kingdom. Lyra Alindra Ven, daughter of the wild court, will you walk beside me? The court waited. She remembered the pit, the torn dress, the blood on her face, the crown dropped at her feet by a beast everyone else had feared. She remembered the invisible girl she had been and the princess others tried to use. Then she looked at the man before her. He had once loved her through fear and called it protection. Now he stood without throne, curse, or command. Nothing remained except the choice. Yes, she said. Beside me, the wolves howled. Years later, the throne built in the pit still stood in the center of the Covenant Hall. No ruler ever sat upon it. Children were taught that it had been built by beasts from the bones and armor of those who believed fear could make a kingdom loyal. They were also taught the name of the bloodied servant who sat there only once. Not because she wanted power, because the forgotten creatures of the realm remembered what men had erased. And when the court threw her among monsters, the monsters recognized their queen.